With the upcoming release of the 4th DLC for Atomic Heart, we decided to check the graphics settings and see how they affect image quality and performance. The testing was carried out on 2 systems. One used an Intel Core i5-12400 processor with an RTX 4070 graphics card. The other used an AMD Ryzen 5 7600 processor with an RX 7600 graphics card. Both computers had 32 GB of RAM, and the game was installed on an SSD. There were no hard drives in the test PCs. The depth of field effect is mainly noticeable during cutscenes. It blurs the background and gives the image a more cinematic look. This setting is subjective. Some players like the effect, while others prefer to keep it disabled. We did not test motion blur because it adds blur and reduces image clarity. Atomic Heart uses TAA anti-aliasing. If it is turned off, the image quality becomes noticeably worse and noise appears on objects. However, this gives a small performance boost of about 11%. When TAA is enabled, the image becomes more pleasant. The difference between medium and high settings is difficult to notice without careful inspection. Owners of NVIDIA graphics cards can use DLAA anti-aliasing. This option improves image quality and has almost no impact on performance. There is less flickering and visual noise on the screen, especially during movement. If your graphics card supports it, DLAA is the better option. Ghosting does not appear when using it, just like with other DLSS modes. If you need to improve performance, you can enable DLSS in quality or balanced mode. The difference in detail is minimal and noticeable only on close inspection, while the FPS boost is significant. Performance mode reduces image quality slightly more, but the drop cannot be considered critical. When comparing TAA and DLAA, the difference is within the margin of error. Enabling DLSS in quality mode increases FPS by about 29%. Balanced mode increases it by about 32%, and performance mode by about 37%. DLSS works well in this game and can be safely used. FSR performs worse. Even when FSR is enabled in quality mode, noise and ghosting appear, and lowering the settings makes the situation worse. This is especially noticeable in motion when the grass turns into a pixelated mess. For this reason, it is better not to use FSR in this game. DLSS frame generation increases FPS but also increases frame time, which can create a slight delay in controls. It is better to leave this feature disabled. Animation quality does not affect performance or visual quality. Animations look the same regardless of the selected setting. This setting may not work correctly, or we simply did not notice any difference. If you have noticed what this setting affects, let us know in the comments. Shadows are one of the most demanding settings in the game. It is better not to lower them below high. In this scene, the difference between maximum, ultra, and high settings is almost impossible to notice. When lowered to medium, some shadows disappear. For animated shadows, switching from maximum to ultra makes them slightly less detailed. High shows almost no visible difference. At medium settings, shadows begin to flicker, and at low, they look very simple. In terms of performance, lowering shadows to ultra or high provides up to a 6% FPS increase. Lowering them to medium gives up to 18%, and switching to low can increase FPS by up to 25%. Ambient occlusion affects lighting, so this setting can be adjusted according to personal preference. The difference between maximum and high is difficult to notice, and there is no difference in FPS. Lowering the setting to medium increases FPS by about 10% and makes the image visually brighter. If the game appears in too dark, medium may be the better option. The difference between medium and low is also difficult to notice. Visual effects determine the number of effects displayed on screen, so it is better to keep them at maximum. The difference between maximum and high is minimal, but lowering the setting to medium or lower significantly reduces the detail of effects. The FPS gain depends on the scene. Changing from maximum to high can increase FPS by up to 4%. Lowering the setting to medium or low can increase performance by up to 13% and 15% respectively. The number of objects can safely be set to low. This removes unnecessary visual clutter that only gets in the way during gameplay. Performance improves by about 5 to 8% depending on the scene, and the gameplay becomes slightly easier. In some areas, notes with hints may be scattered across the floor. The more clutter there is around them, the longer it will take to find them. The question is whether you actually need that. Materials control plant animation and vegetation draw distance. Lowering the setting to medium makes all vegetation static, so it is better to keep it at maximum. If improving performance is important, high is the optimal option. Lowering the setting below high is not recommended. Volumetric fog is better disabled because it is important to clearly see enemies in this game. Turning it off improves visibility, increases performance, and removes artifacts that may appear at higher settings. In scenes where fog gathers near the ceiling, changing the camera angle may stretch it and create visual errors. Medium or low settings make the fog fill the entire room, which makes the scene look more realistic. Completely disabling it removes the fog entirely, improves visibility, and increases performance. Post-processing simulates reflections and adds a kind of imitation of ray tracing where it is not actually present. At high settings, reflections may appear and disappear when the camera angle changes, creating the impression that they are drifting away from the player. It is best to set this option to low. This increases FPS and removes visual artifacts. Lower settings also reduce excessive surface gloss, which makes the image look more natural. Unlike post-processing, real ray tracing removes these visual issues, but significantly reduces performance. Even powerful computers may experience stutters. The game also warns about possible instability when enabling it, which means using this option is not always justified. Textures should remain at maximum because the game does not use more than 8 GB of VRAM. Lowering this setting does not provide a noticeable FPS increase, and the visual difference is almost impossible to see. Anisotropic filtering has almost no effect on performance or quality. It is best to leave it at 8x. It is possible that this setting does not work correctly in the game, which would explain why changes have little visible effect. If you notice any difference, let us know in the comments. Geometry quality should remain at maximum. Lowering it to low simplifies terrain and reduces tree detail. The impact on FPS is minimal. Vegetation quality strongly affects performance and influences both the detail and the amount of vegetation. This setting can be adjusted according to personal preference. Lower values noticeably reduce the number of darker vegetation elements. Storage speed did not affect the final FPS on our test systems because both computers used SSD drives. There were no hard drives in the test PCs. If you notice any difference on your own system, write about it in the comments. The situation with shader cache is less straightforward. On some systems, the cache compiles incorrectly and causes stutters. Disabling the cache provides more stable FPS on some PCs, while on others the result may be different. It is best for each user to test this setting individually, because it has a strong impact on overall game stability. When shader cache is enabled, the game also uses more RAM. Field of view is best set to 80. At this value, visual distortion during camera movement is minimal. Higher values increase distortion. So if you experience discomfort or motion sickness while playing, it is recommended to keep the FOV at 80. These are the recommended settings for Atomic Heart. Try them on your computer and find the balance between image quality and performance. Share your results in the comments. And that's all for today. See you in the next videos.